It's that time of year again where we want to remind you to please be on the lookout if you are on the roads, particularly in the South Peninsula area at night, because our western leopard toads are on the move again. These endangered amphibians, you may recall, leave their homes, the gardens, wherever they've been living most recently, and start making their way back towards wetland areas and ponds to breed at this time of year. And unfortunately, the road to the pond or the wetland is often a busy road with lots of traffic crossing, which ends badly for the toads. It is actually quite remarkable, the story, which is why I think it's worth reminding you about, as well as just cautioning you to be on the lookout. Some of the facts and figures around what the toads do are pretty impressive. So let's bring in Helen Lockhart, who is the Conservation and Sustainability Manager at the Two Oceans Aquarium. And Helen, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks so much, Pippa. Lovely to chat with you again.
Thanks. They're such little creatures, and yet some of them travel as far as 5 kilometers to reach those ponds. Is that correct?
That is correct. They are absolutely remarkable animals. I sort of fell in love with them when we started working on an exhibit here in the aquarium back in around 2008, which was all about frogs and toads. And I'm fortunate that I live in Sikufle, and there is an active population. And for probably the good part of the last 20 years, my partner and I have been working with these animals and helping them get across the road. So I do have a particular affinity and love for them.
Okay. Now, the reason they need our help is the reason we're talking to you today. Helen, will you just explain the context for us of what is actually happening at this time of year and why so many of them are moving across a place where they really shouldn't be, namely a busy road?
Yeah, so we have western leopard toads, which are endemic to our region. That means they live nowhere else in the world, and they are at various places around the Cape Peninsula. But this time of the year, sort of between July and October, is really their breeding season. So what happens is toads, which most people don't realize, these toads don't live in water all year round. They live in compost heaps and under wood piles and in veggie gardens, in your garden or in vegetation. And then come late July, the adults start moving towards their breeding sites, which are breeding ponds, flays, wetlands. And as you mentioned, they have to travel great distances across very, very busy roads. They do this at night, obviously, because then, there's, in the natural world, there's lower predation for them. But the problem is, obviously, we've got cars traveling at night on these roads. So they start moving across these roads to the breeding grounds, where they will find a mate either en route or at the pond, and obviously eggs are laid and fertilized there. So it is very, very treacherous. They generally cross sometimes when it's sort of wet or slightly drizzly weather. It doesn't have to be a downpour. In fact, they don't like the downpour. But they look like tiny little stones on the road. So unfortunately, a lot of them get squished. And this is where the volunteers in the various areas come in, because they go out actively onto the roads and help, patrol, look for toads, and help them move across the road. And the toads know exactly where they're going. So it's just a case of pulling off safely, picking up the little toad in your hand and moving it in the direction it is facing across the road, because, as I say, they know where they're going.
So is that part of the problem, Helen, that well-meaning passers-by who do see one might spot it and put it back on the other side of the road to try and encourage it to go back to the safe space, not realizing it is literally going to turn around and keep going the way it was?
Correct. And what's so fascinating about them, if you hold the toad and if you turn them away from the area that they're facing, their head automatically turns back to actually where they were going. So they do know very, very well, and that's why it is critically important to move them in the direction that they're facing, because they know the path, and many of them will have traveled that path for many years as adults, so they know exactly where they're going.
Helen, which parts of Cape Town specifically need to be on the lookout? You've mentioned they're endemic to our part of the world, but it's not as big an issue in the middle of the CBD as it is down in the South Peninsula. Is it limited to the peninsula, or are they prevalent in other areas as well?
They are found on the Overstrand as well, but certainly in around the Cape Peninsula, it's places like Sikufle, which I've mentioned. Noordhoek have big migration crossings. Kirstenhof, Lakeside, some around Princess Flay, Westlake, Steenberg. So quite a number of places around the Cape Peninsula.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned they look like a stone in the middle of the road. So, Helen, I mean, in terms of advice on what to be on the lookout for, obviously, firstly, if you are driving at night in the parts of the Cape that you've just mentioned, please be mindful of this risk and perhaps reduce your speed, keep your eyes peeled. Obviously, we don't want accidents happening on the road with people responding irrationally. But Helen, what advice to motorists or observers on the side of the road on how to respond if they do see one?
So as I said, they do look like little stones. Their sort of belly side and throat sides are lighter than their top side. So that often will reflect. Even their eyes actually also reflect in the headlights of cars.
Okay.
And often what happens is that, when you approach with a car with your lights on, they sort of hunker down, they sort of try and flatter themselves out. So it really is a case of pulling off safely off the road. If you have any sort of reflective gear, please do wear that, because obviously your safety is just as important. And then literally to pick the toad up very gently, holding it with both hands if necessary, and then moving it across to the side of the road. And that's, I think the big thing is, even if you feel that you don't want to pick up the toad, I mean, one of the great myths is that you'll get warts from toads and frogs. That's absolutely a myth. You will not catch any weird thing if you touch a frog or a toad, and you won't find a prince either. So let's get those myths out the way. But very importantly is just to get them to safety. And as I say, if you don't want to pick them up, just slow down, maybe put your hazard lights on and flag down cars behind you, and hopefully let the toad get across the road to safety and then carry on your journey. Okay. But first prize is to get out and move the toad. And again,
to move it in the direction it was moving towards, not back the other way. Eric is wondering how old these toads can get. I mean, if they are lucky enough to survive the road crossing and make it back to the breeding area and carry on a long and happy life, how long can that life be, Helen?
That's a good question. I'm actually not too sure of that, but I know, some of the toads that we've picked up, particularly some of the females, because the females are bigger than the males. And some of the females have been sort of in excess of 12 to 13 centimeters in length. So those are good sized females. I haven't picked up one that size this season yet, but they probably do live for a good few years if they do manage to survive, the annual breeding season.
Yeah,
I think the other important factor just to say is that so even though the breeding season is late July to sort of end of October, because that's when they move to the ponds and then move back again, we also have the emergence of the toadlets. So, as I mentioned, the eggs are laid, fertilized in the ponds, and then obviously metamorphosis happens. They go through their whole tadpole stage, and then these little tiny juveniles, which are tiny. I mean, they're sometimes the size of a 2 rand coin, tiny little things. They start emerging from the ponds and then start making their way back across the road. So it really is quite a 5 to 6 month process, and we just ask not tourists, but people on the roads just to keep an eye open during this time frame.
Okay. If somebody absolutely cannot bear the thought of moving it themselves, is there someone they can call like yourself? Or I know the toad nuts, I think if they're still active, who do you call to report the presence of the toad, Helen?
So what I'm going to suggest is that there is a website. It's the westernleopardtoad.org.
Okay. It's called
westernleopardtoad.org. And to look up on that website, there is a list of the coordinators, the volunteer coordinators in the various areas with telephone numbers. So perhaps, if you are living in one of the areas where toads are active, then perhaps just download that list and have it on your phone or have it close by so that you can call somebody if necessary.
Helen Lockhart, thank you so much for that very helpful information. Helen speaking to us there from the Two Oceans Aquarium, where she is the Conservation and Sustainability Manager. So please, if you are living in any of the parts of the peninsula that have these wetland areas where the toads might be moving, just be mindful of it, particularly if you are on the roads at night time for the coming months.